Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into a topic that's increasingly relevant in our diverse workplaces: generation gaps. Whether you're navigating different communication styles, leading a multi-generational team, or just curious about how different age groups interact at work, this deep dive is for you. We'll explore the unique perspectives of traditionalists, baby boomers, Gen X, and Gen Y, and discover how to bridge those divides for a more harmonious and productive environment. Let's start understanding and appreciating every generation. You've probably felt it, that subtle friction maybe, when team members from different age groups approach a problem from completely different angles. Or perhaps you've wondered why, a brilliant idea from a junior colleague gets a sort of skeptical look from a seasoned veteran. Our mission today, drawing insights from a comprehensive professional development training manual, is really to dissect why these differences exist and, more importantly, how to turn that friction into fuel for, well, incredible collaboration and innovation in your workplace. As you likely know, the term generation gap. It describes the differing values and attitudes between age groups. While it first gained popularity describing, say, parent-child dynamics since the 1960s, it's become really crucial for understanding workplace interactions. The reality is, having multiple generations side by side isn't just a challenge. It's a profound opportunity for varied perspectives.
That's right. And what's truly foundational here is how we define a generation. It's basically a group of people born within the same period, sharing similar attitudes, similar values, all shaped by common experiences during their formative years.
Hmm.
And given the average human lifespan, it's actually not uncommon to find maybe up to 4 distinct generations coexisting in the modern workplace.
Right, 4 generations. And those are the 4 we're focusing on today: traditionalists, baby boomers, Generation X, and then Generation Y, often called millennials. But what does this really mean, practically speaking, for managers and colleagues trying to work together effectively?
That's a great question. How do these differences actually manifest? Well, the source material points out challenges from both employee to employee angles, so things like miscommunication, maybe, or even clashing confrontation styles. And also from the manager to employee perspective, think about different views on authority, communication preferences, or even work-life balance. Managers especially need to be pretty sharp and clued in to these diverse traits to proactively navigate situations that could impact, team morale or productivity.
Okay, so to really get into the nuances, let's meet each generation. Where should we start? Maybe the traditionalists.
Makes sense. Traditionalists born before 1946, they were truly shaped by immense historical events. I mean, imagine growing up through the Great Depression, then World War I and II. Scarcity was like a daily reality. And military influence was pervasive, which led to a culture that valued conformity and, well, traditional family roles.
It makes their dedication to consistency so much more understandable, doesn't it? We put it like that.
Absolutely. Character-wise, they are incredibly hardworking, deeply loyal to employers, often staying with one company for their entire career. They tend to respect authority, avoid open conflict, and sometimes can be resistant to change. But it's not just resistance for its own sake. It's often a deep-seated reverence for proven methods, forged out of necessity. They value safety, security, consistency, and commitment above pretty much all else. In the workplace, this translates to a strong work ethic, a respect for leadership and hierarchy, and an appreciation for recognition for their hard work. They're typically team-oriented and prefer traditional, maybe lecture-style training, often striving to maintain the status quo, which, interestingly, can be a surprising asset for quality control if you frame new initiatives as enhancements, not total replacements.
That sets a powerful precedent. So if traditionalists are sort of the foundation of loyalty and structure, how did the next wave, the baby boomers, begin to reshape that landscape?
Right, the baby boomers. Born between 1946 and 1964, they're a direct product of the post-war boom, the GI Bill. They came of age in an era of prosperity, largely in the suburbs, and television became a huge part of their lives, a really big influence. They also witnessed and often participated in major social shifts like the Civil Rights Movement and the Vietnam War. That marked a real departure from earlier traditions.
So a generation that grew up with more resources, maybe a bit more optimism, but also started to challenge things more openly.
Precisely. They're generally confident, independent, and willing to confront and challenge existing norms. They tend to be well educated. And importantly, they often define themselves strongly by their careers. Frequently putting in long hours, the workaholic label sometimes fits. Their working style is very work-centric, motivated by incentives, and highly competitive. They often equate their self-worth with their status or position at work. They tend to thrive on complex tasks and still largely prefer hierarchical structures and face-to-face interactions. They really embodied that corporate ladder climb.
Okay. From the work-centric boomers, we now move to Generation X, the first generation to really grow up with technology as a constant presence.
That's a key point. Generation X, born roughly 1965 to 1980, they experienced a significant economic shift from manufacturing to service. And yes, they were indeed the first generation to grow up with personal computers, video games, cell phones, email. It was all emerging then. Many were also raised in two-income or single-parent homes, leading to more time in daycare, which actually fostered their individualistic and self-sufficient characters. They're flexible, often changing jobs for career advancement, and are notably tolerant of diverse lifestyles, valuing work-life balance quite highly.
So it's almost like boomers climbed the corporate ladder, and Gen X looked at it and thought, can we build a shortcut? And
Well,
maybe have time for life too.
exactly. That's a good way to put it. They crave freedom and responsibility, and they really don't like micromanagement or overly rigid schedules. They're quick to adopt technology if it makes things more efficient, are less committed to single employers than their predecessors, and are often key drivers of change within organizations. They enjoy dynamic environments, maybe appreciate a bit of fun at work too.
And finally, we get to Generation Y, also known as millennials, a generation that, as you said, has truly never known a world without technology readily available.
Yeah, Generation Y, born roughly 1979 to 1994, they see technology as just a normal part of life. It's like breathing for them. They thrive on electronic communication, prefer the internet for learning, for purchases, everything. Their backgrounds often involve more group interactions, playgroups, team sports, which fostered a strong team orientation, and they often expect things to be done faster and, well, maybe better thanks to the tech they grew up with.
This generation grew up in a very, very connected world. How does that specifically shape their approach to work?
Well, they are incredibly capable of multitasking, especially while communicating electronically, texting while doing three other things, right? But this multitasking isn't always about pure efficiency. Sometimes it's more about context switching because they've always had multiple digital streams. So the challenge for managers can be ensuring depth of focus when it's needed, not just breadth of engagement. Character-wise, they are notably family-centric, often valuing family over work, which is a shift. They actively seek flexible schedules, sometimes even if it means less pay. They're achievement-oriented, confident, and generally unafraid to question authority. They thrive on meaningful work, are eager to learn, and work exceptionally well in teams. But they also seek positive reinforcement. Feedback and periodic recognition are important. They're highly motivated by flexible schedules, maybe more than just monetary incentives, and will often push back on long hours if it cuts into family time. They expect new challenges, achievement opportunities. They see promotions as demonstrations of their worth. And they genuinely seek inclusion and mentorship. They want guidance.
Wow. So we've met each generation, each with its own distinct backdrop. Now let's really dig into how these backgrounds shape their interactions and, well, the potential differences we see in the workplace.
Yeah, let's connect this to the bigger picture. These differences in background, attitude, working style, life experience, they're foundational. Take technology comfort level, for instance. It's a huge differentiator. Traditionalists and some boomers had limited exposure. They adapted. Gen X and Y grew up with it. And frankly, that can lead to frustration sometimes for the younger folks when older colleagues struggle with what seems like basic tech. Media consumption, too. Older generations relied more on human interaction for news, for entertainment. Gen X and Y grew up immersed in digital media. This influences their preference maybe for text or IM over a face-to-face chat sometimes.
I can certainly see how that plays out in team meetings or even just daily communication preferences. What about attitudes towards authority? That seems like a big one.
It's a striking shift, absolutely. Older generations were often taught to revere authority, maybe due to military or post-war influences. You respected the hierarchy. Younger generations, however, increasingly challenge the status quo. They expect explanations, transparency, they want to know the why. Individuality is another point. Younger generations, perhaps from those early daycare experiences, tend to be more independent. Older generations might prioritize group harmony a bit more. And loyalty to employers, that's changed drastically. Older generations, having maybe lived through harder economic times, are more likely to stay put. Dedication was seen as the path to reward. Younger generations, though, often view changing jobs as a normal part of career advancement. It's a more individualistic perspective on career building. Then their working styles show further divergences. Younger generations prioritize flexible hours, work-life balance, sometimes even willing to pay for it. Older generations often value consistent hard work, fixed schedules, maybe a clearer separation between work life and personal life, and the willingness to challenge the status quo. It's distinct. Younger generations might quickly present their views, offer critiques, which older generations might sometimes perceive as, well, maybe disrespectful or impatient. Even motivation varies. Older generations often seek stable environments, conformity. Younger ones might be more driven by achievement, competition, which can feel a bit disruptive to the older group sometimes.
And what about just their general life experience outside of work? How does that factor in? Scarcity versus abundance, maybe?
Exactly. Older generations experienced more tangible hardship, more scarcity in many cases. That taught them the value of basics, resilience. Younger generations, while facing their own economic challenges, were generally perhaps a bit more sheltered from that kind of scarcity. Entertainment also varied significantly. Think traditional events versus highly sensory stimulating activities like video games, 4D rides. It shapes expectations. And of course, technology again. For Gen X and Y, it's a way of life, a social tool. For older generations, it was something they had to adapt to, often much more slowly. These deep-seated experiences really shape their implicit expectations and how they communicate.
Okay, so we've got a much clearer picture of these distinctions now.
Yeah.
The big question then becomes, how do we actually bridge these gaps? The source material offers some fantastic, really actionable advice on finding common ground.
Yes, and what's incredibly practical here is the focus on intentional communication strategies. First, adopting a common communication style using something called the TAP method. T is for to the point. Be brief, be succinct. Older generations appreciate the clarity, younger ones appreciate the brevity, so it works for both. A is for adapt. Change your communication method based on your audience. Maybe an in-person chat or a call for an older worker versus email or IM for a younger one. But adapting isn't just the medium, right? It's also the format within that medium. A concise email for a traditionalist might be a few sentences, whereas for a millennial, it might be bullet points and a quick Slack message. You need to tune in. And P is for professional. Avoid jargon, avoid text abbreviations, use proper salutations, proper closings. It shows respect, sets a clear standard for everyone.
That TAP method sounds really useful. What else?
Another really effective strategy mentioned is creating affinity groups. These are basically non-hierarchical groups centered around common interests, like a work newsletter group, maybe a professional book club, or even a community service team. These give people from different generations opportunities to interact and learn about each other outside of their specific work tasks. It builds connection, fosters understanding.
Getting people talking outside the project deadlines. Makes sense.
Exactly. And then there's sharing knowledge more broadly. This helps break down barriers, build a collaborative environment. This can be done through various methods, maybe setting up an internal blog for open discussions with clear rules, of course, or forming focus groups with diverse generational input to tackle issues or generate ideas, maybe an employee newsletter with interviews where people can share their thoughts, or even just an ideas box, physical or electronic, for submitting suggestions. These approaches kind of reduce the fear and potential misinterpretation between generations by creating safe spaces for exchange.
Understanding these differences is one thing, but, how do we move from awareness to action, especially when conflict inevitably pops up? Let's talk conflict management.
Right, conflict is natural, unavoidable sometimes. But managing it across generations needs specific approaches. For younger bosses managing older workers, the source suggests the ACE technique. A is for acknowledge. Acknowledge their experience, their value, their contributions. And what makes this powerful isn't just saying, I acknowledge your experience, but understanding that for many older workers, their value is deeply intertwined with their life's work, their history with the company. So tapping into that, you're not just managing, you're kind of building a legacy bridge, respecting that history. C is for caring. Show genuine interest in their personal lives, hobbies, families. Listen actively. It builds rapport. And E is exchange ideas. Actively ask for their input, value their opinions, and crucially, give them recognition when their ideas are implemented. It creates that valuable give and take.
That's really practical advice. What about just keeping employees happy and avoiding turnover across these different groups?
Yeah, retention. To avoid turnovers, having a solid retention plan is crucial. Managers should continuously gauge employee engagement. and proactively try to determine what different people value based on those generational traits we discussed. Is it flexibility? Is it incentives? Recognition? Training? The manual suggests preparing focused questions if you sense dissatisfaction, asking about personal goals, career milestones, and being ready to advocate for your employees, maybe working with HR to find aligned solutions. It's about being proactive, not reactive.
And breaking down those stereotypes we all carry around.
That's key too. The source suggests this is best achieved by involving teams in challenging activities that require collaboration, new projects, friendly competitions, things that force people to work together, and then importantly, hold debrief meetings afterward. Spotlight the team achievements, but also highlight the commonalities that emerged across the generations during that activity. Relate it back to daily work. This helps everyone see beyond those easy, often inaccurate, age-based assumptions.
So making the shared experience visible.
Exactly. Another important strategy is to embrace the hot zone. That area where you sense conflict is brewing or already exists. First step, acknowledge its existence immediately. Don't let it simmer and spread. Then engage it as soon as possible. Provide direct feedback to all parties involved. Set clear expectations for how future conflicts should be handled, and maybe hold one-on-one coaching sessions to help each employee generate solutions for avoiding these issues going forward. Don't just let it fester.
That takes courage, but sounds necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And the source mentioned a care model as well. How does that help teams treat each other more like peers?
Right. The CARE model is designed to foster genuine peer-to-peer relationships, regardless of age or tenure. C is for collaborate. Exchange ideas openly, set ground rules for disagreements, encourage diverse views, ensure everyone participates fairly. A is for acknowledge. Teach teams to recognize each other's value explicitly, and also how to deliver constructive behavior-based feedback, not personal attacks. R is for respect. This means teaching basics like proper greetings, professional posture, but also having zero tolerance for any derogatory age-related remarks. None. And E is for equal. Emphasize that all team members are of equal value and their contributions matter regardless of their age. It levels the playing field.
That sounds like building a really strong team culture foundation.
It is. And finally, one more powerful conflict reduction tool mentioned is creating a succession plan for employees. When people have a clear career goal to focus on, a path forward within the company, they're often less susceptible to getting bogged down in conflict. They have a stake in the future. Now, this requires knowing their personal goals, their skill gaps, and getting real commitment from leadership to support that development. Some tips include setting clear, real, attainable, time-driven goals, consulting HR and other departments, determining educational or training needs. Setting up mentor programs can be huge here. Tracking progress, holding periodic review meetings. It shows investment in the individual.
So putting all this together, what does it really mean for us? Beyond just managing differences, how can we truly leverage the incredible power, the potential of having multiple generations working together?
Well, if we connect this back to the bigger picture, the benefits of generational diversity, when harnessed correctly, are immense. You gain access to a much wider array of perspectives and ideas. Different life experiences lead to different ways of thinking, which naturally leads to the generation of more diverse solutions, more innovation. You avoid groupthink. It also creates really rich mentoring opportunities, flowing both ways. Older generations can help refine younger generations' social skills, share invaluable experience, while younger generations can help older ones leverage new technologies, understand new markets, perhaps. Ultimately, this creates a profound source of knowledge for the entire organization, a collective brain trust that's far more resilient and adaptable.
How do we foster that learning from each other?
The source suggests the FIT model for meetings as a practical way to do this. F is for frequent. Hold regular team meetings, not just for updates, but specifically for engagement and dialogue. Is for informal. Less formal meetings, maybe using icebreakers or energizers, can encourage more open sharing. People put their guard down a bit. And T is for team building. Focus meetings sometimes on celebrating achievements, discussing improvements, incorporating new learning, or working on collaborative projects together rather than just status reports.
And for the managers listening in, what's their role in modeling this kind of behavior? How do they lead the way?
That's crucial. Managers, particularly, should actively model embracing the unfamiliar. The source uses the LEA model for this. L is look. Actively look for new ideas, new attitudes, new trends emerging in the workplace. Be curious. E is engage. Immediately engage with these unfamiliar concepts. Ask questions, take notes. Don't just dismiss something because it's new or different. A is acquire. Do your homework. Research and learn more about it. Find reasons why it might have value for the team or the organization. And D is disseminate. Share that knowledge with your team. Get their input. Explain the potential benefits. Show your learning too. Modeling these behaviors yourself, the looking, engaging, acquiring, disseminating, is absolutely key. It shows the team that learning, adaptation, and respecting different approaches are valued. It's leading by example, fundamentally.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive on generation gaps. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you've gained valuable insights into the backgrounds, attitudes, and working styles of different generations, and feel more equipped to foster understanding and collaboration in your own workplace. Remember, diversity in age brings a wealth of experience and new ideas. If you found this deep dive insightful, please show your support by hitting that like button, sharing it with your colleagues and friends, and subscribing to our channel for more essential professional development content. Until next time, keep building bridges across generations.
And maybe consider this. How much more resilient and innovative could your team become if you actively started celebrating the unique perspectives each generation brings, rather than just, tolerating their differences? Think about really harnessing that power.